Welcome to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Mendte. We are outside the headquarters in Trenton of the New Jersey Education Association. We're going in for an interview with the Vice President in a minute. Also this week, the ashes of former Governor Brendan Byrne are taken to their final resting place, and you won't believe where he chose. Also, an important new treatment in the fight against Parkinson's disease. And we'll introduce you to the New Jersey Teacher of the Year, who is up for the National Teacher of the Year. But first, our interview with Sean Spiller, the Vice President of the New Jersey Education Association. A lot to talk to him about. A teacher strike just ended in Jersey City. We'll talk about the ramifications for the state. More money in Governor Murphy's budget for schools, but we begin with school safety and the possibility of teachers carrying guns. One of the topics that's top of mind, not only in New Jersey but across the country, is school safety, and there's several proposals floating out there. Let's start with the question, though, how safe do you believe New Jersey schools are?
Overall, I think pretty safe. I think we've done a lot over the last number of years in terms of preparing students, preparing staff, in terms of hardening the locations, if you will, allowing access only to parents or others who should be there. So I think overall, parents should feel comfortable in the sense that our schools, I think, are relatively safe.
And could you do a better job?
Always. I think as an educator, you're always going to hear an answer from me. If you ask, could it be better? The answer is yes. You're always trying to find ways to make it safer.
What could be better?
I think any one of those things I just cited in terms of making sure the buildings themselves have what they need to make sure that only the right people are getting in. We've got some districts that don't have the resources to really make sure they've got the proper door locks and proper security procedures in place. So some of that has to improve probably.
You're a teacher, you're a high school teacher, you teach science. Mm-hmm. Would you like to be armed?
No, not at all. I mean, that, to me, that's just, it's a ridiculous idea in this sense. I know that as an educator, when kids come into my environment, you want to have a very safe feeling, a very comfortable feel, someplace where the kids want to approach you and be able to share with you. And when you introduce guns, weapons into that environment, into that setting, I think it changes the dynamic.
Well, there's some states that are all for this, and I know it's probably going to be a state-by-state issue and not a federal issue. If there was a teacher that, let's say, was former law enforcement or served in the armed forces and was proficient with a gun, should that person be allowed to have a gun?
I see a lot of problems with it. I think that, for example, when we have our drills or something else, we have a lockdown drill. We're supposed to lock our doors, go to a safe location in the classroom. I can only imagine that, God forbid, something were really happening. When we have our law enforcement officers come in, people from the sheriff's department, different from our local police, different from all the different entities that show up, how are they going to determine who the shooter is, who the armed teacher is, who's the person they're encountering in the hallway with a weapon? Are they a good person or a bad person? And I just worry about that because the more bullets that are flying, the more chance that our kids are going to get hit or other colleagues are going to get hit. You
recently had a walkout at some of the schools. And before the walkout, I talked to several educators, principals, teachers. They hated the idea.
Yeah.
They said that it's just unsafe.
Add me to the list. I hate the idea.
You hate the idea too?
Yeah, I hate the idea.
And I just listened to the 60 Minutes interview with some of the Parkland teenagers that helped to organize this. They said they want to call for more walkouts, that they'll keep doing walkouts until they get action. Hate the idea of guns,
or are you talking about hate the idea of the walkouts?
They hate the idea of the walkouts.
Oh, I apologize. I hate the idea of guns.
Okay, you hate the idea of guns. You like the walkouts.
Yeah, I think students standing up and speaking out, I think we've seen that over the course of history in this nation on a lot of issues at the time that were not that popular in many instances. But I think, look, when kids figure out a way to express themselves, and I think an important piece to that as an educator is, okay, you're walking out, but what is it you're hoping to accomplish? How are you going to highlight the issue? What do you hope the follow-up is? Where do you go next? I think those are all part of a teachable moment. So walking out just to walk out, but I think I see a lot more in what these kids are doing. They're walking out for a purpose.
I don't think any of the pushback on the walkouts, especially to the educators I spoke with, had anything to do with the reason for the walkout. I think they agreed that the students should have a voice. Mm-hmm. They were worried about the publicity that the students are walking out in mass on a certain time in this atmosphere, and that they could be a target. That's what they're concerned.
Sure.
There are safety concerns. That's all.
Fair.
They wanted another way of doing it.
Fair point. I think that I know personally and I know organizationally we would absolutely be concerned as well in terms of when these kids are walking out. I think the challenge around it is when the kids have decided they're doing something, it's difficult to, it's if you've been in these buildings, you can't just say no and all the kids just listen and don't do it. So I think as an educator and I think as administrators, how do you try and help them do it in as safe a way as possible? How do you try and maybe manage that in a way that allows them to express themselves and they feel comfortable that they are doing something and are participating, but you're doing it in as structured a way as possible that you can kind of still make sure they're safe? Okay.
The governor recently had a budget address.
Sure.
And said he was going to give $283 million in increased funding for schools. Yeah. You must have been happy to hear
Absolutely.
that.
Thrilled.
This governor is doing just about everything the NAGA wants?
Well, I'd say he's off to a great start in the sense of he's doing what we need for our kids. So for the last 8 years, we've had our schools that have been underfunded, not having the resources that we need to properly educate our students. So what he's done so far is absolutely steps in the right direction.
It's been pointed out by several people that $283 million is great. It's still not the funding you've had in the past, and until they fix the school funding formula, it really doesn't matter that much. It's good to have extra money, but you're not fixing the problem. Is that fair?
Well, I think you're working towards it. I think his plan is to phase up over 4 years, and he's in year 1 of that phase up. And I think as you work towards that, it's very difficult to expect anyone coming in, a governor coming in, to go from 0 to 60 in 1 year. I think right now he's got to figure out a way. He's got a lot of pressing issues, a lot of issues that require funding support, and this is one of them, one of the priorities. But he's working his way to make sure that we do get to that funding formula.
I'll get back to the governor in 1 second because you've agreed to stick around for a second
Sure.
segment. And thanks so much for doing that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the New Jersey teachers' strike that was just resolved. There's not a lot of details out about the resolution. Can you fill us in on what I'm sure there was a compromise.
I don't know all the details as well. I apologize on that one, but we haven't heard them all either. But I will say this, and I know I was there with a lot of our members on Friday when they were out, and they were demanding, respect, really, respect for what we do. I think a lot of times we as educators hear from so many people, it's the most important job in the world, we thank you for doing it. And right now under Chapter 78, those same educators, all of us, they're making less every year to do it. And we know that's unsustainable. So they were out to say, look, this is unsustainable in terms of our healthcare costs. We can't keep making less every year. We've got to support our families, and the fact that they've settled and have some tentative agreement means, to your point, both sides did come together, figure it out, and figure out a way that works for everyone.
Chapter 78 is a 2011 law that had some mandates on how much teachers had to contribute to their pension fund and to their health care.
Yes.
And your organization has been fighting against Chapter 78 since then. The Jersey City strike was all about Chapter 78.
All about Chapter 78.
People were looking at that strike specifically in hoping that it would be a linchpin for reform around the state when it comes to Chapter 78. Is it? Do you know? Early
to say, but I hope so. I hope so. I think that when you see opportunities, and I think that's what this is, when you see the opportunity where educators have now shown the way for others in terms of how you get that done and how you maybe push forward and demand that respect, and also the opportunity with a governor, where you have a governor supporting our schools with more resources, when you relieve some of that stress and that tension. Districts, they all want to do the right thing. Board of Eds, they want to do the right thing, but they've been pressed for the last number of years with less and less funding, and of course, the desire to accrue more and more wealth through Chapter 78. So now there's finally a little bit of a balance where you've got a little bit more dollars coming in from a new governor, and also you've got the educators who are saying this can't continue, and now there's maybe a way to find.
Chapter 78 can be reformed. It can be changed.
Yes, it can.
Are you pushing for that with this governor?
Absolutely.
And has he been receptive?
He has, in terms of he understands how bad this is. He understands what this means. We right now have some of the best schools in the nation, 1, 2, or 3 by any measure, and we're not the best in the nation by accident. We're the best in the nation because we get quality people and we support them and we support our schools. We've got to make sure we don't lose that, and he understands how important that is.
We'll continue our conversation with Sean Spiller, the Vice President of the New Jersey Education Association, when Jersey Matters continues right after this. Welcome back to Jersey Matters. We continue our conversation with Sean Spiller, who is the Vice President of the New Jersey Education Association, which is the teachers union in the state. Let's talk about Paula White. She was nominated by, no, she got the job as assistant commissioner, nominated by the governor, put in by the school board, and then she was fired. Many people said that was the NJEA. You put pressure on the governor to fire Paula White. Is that what happened?
No. I would say this. I can say personally, too, I don't agree with everything that she stands for, but I will say the governor makes his own decisions as to who works for the governor, and we do not make that decision.
Oh, I understand. The governor makes the decision. You have some influence, though, with the governor.
Well, I'd hope the governor would listen to a lot of different opinions and perspectives on who he wants to kind of populate any agency, and certainly around education, we would hope that he listens to us and other educators. But you know, he makes the decision at the end of the day. His commissioner makes the decision at the end of the day, but you know, not us.
It was strange, though. He loved her, and then he hated her. You know, he loved her, and then he didn't think she was qualified. So something happened. Something happened in that time. Were you involved in that time frame? I mean, it may not have been only you, but were you involved in that time frame?
Right. So I heard about it as well, and I heard about it probably right when she was getting not hired again. You know, and for me, I think it was around along the lines of, he's got a lot of people in the administration. I think a lot of them charged with the ability to make hires. And maybe when things rise to a certain level or get to somebody's desk, they realize, oh, wait a minute, maybe this isn't in line with what we're trying to do. So I think that's probably more how it got flagged.
Should I keep asking, or are you not going to tell me if there was a conversation with the governor in that time?
Well, listen, I'll tell you that any conversation I have directly with the governor or otherwise,
not just you. I'm talking about the associate, not just you. I'm not.
Yeah, look, honestly, I'd say this. It's exactly as I said before. You know, I don't agree with everything she stands for. I really think, if I'm going to put my 2 cents on it, that she was hired by somebody, and eventually she got to some position, and someone said, you know, I think we're going in a different direction.
Universal pre-K. Yeah. How much would that cost? The governor says he wants to do it over 4 years. Is that really possible?
Look, I think that as long as we're working towards something, I know in my own district where I live, we're always thrilled when we can move towards something in terms of like universal pre-K. The benefits are so great. You know, I know that right now when we talk about the educational system and its costs, you have to look at the cost on one side of it. On the side when you've got a student that you don't help early and now you need all these other resources to kind of help support them and bring them along. If we can be investing in our kids early, it's just such a smart move. It leads to such better outcomes for our kids, and it's smarter for all of us as taxpayers as well.
It's difficult for him to pay for things like universal pre-K or even come up with the $283 million, $283 million to give to the school district, because he seems to be having this fight with the Senate president, who is reluctant to put some of his ideas up for a vote. And if that doesn't happen, these things can't get done. Sure. And your organization does seem to be in the center of that. You oppose Steve Sweeney because, and it had to do with Chapter 78, right? You opposed Steve Sweeney because he proposed Chapter 78, and you went up against him in his re-election bid. How do you break through that tension? You're going to need him to get any of these reforms. I
think we all break through the tension the same way, in that there are so many things that we stand united on, you know, the things that we fight for. And let's start from our perspective. Number one, kids. We want to make sure we keep our schools as best in the nation, that we make sure our kids keep getting what they need. And I know the governor wants that. I know the Senate president wants that. And when we find that common ground, it's now, where do we go from there? What are the bills that you're putting forward that are going to help support that process? We're going to be right there with you every step of the way to help champion that, to help move it forward, to help do what we can. And I'm pretty confident that both of them will figure out how they manage their relationship to do that as well.
They have to fix their relationship before you can fix your relationship with the Senate president?
No, I don't even think it's about fixing relationships or not fixing relationships or managing one versus another. It's about, we have common things that we agree on. And I think once those things are bringing us together and uniting us, that's what we'll be focused on, that's what we'll be talking about. And I'm pretty confident that's what's going to happen.
I know you're not going to tell me about any conversations that your organization or anybody here has had with Steve Sweeney since the election, so I won't ask. But are there signs that this is in the rearview mirror? Are you getting a good feeling from the Senate president that he's willing to put this in the past?
Well, I'll say this. I know that right away I heard the Senate President talking about making sure that our schools are well funded. This is right after the election. One of his top priorities. A lot of things that we care so much about. So I think, just hearing that, again, brings you back to the core that when he stands for these things and he's going to be supporting these things, we're going to be there as well. And that's what we're all going to have to focus on.
You must feel proud. You mentioned it once that you always rank either first or second when it comes to schools.
Very proud.
How much do you believe are the property taxes and the money spent in the schools related to that outcome?
It's a big part of it, right? I think we all know that on some level you get what you pay for, as they say. I think now the challenge around it is that what's happened is we've lost that state support, and it's driven up those property taxes. So as we know, the state has failed to live up to its obligation. You talked about the school funding formula earlier, just less and less and less. And what that's done is forced local property taxes higher and higher. We've got to get back to a system. We're happy to see the governor start to do that, where we ramp up the state aid and state assistance so that we can keep those property taxes under control. So it shouldn't be a,
is that
you've
possible?
got to have high property tax. Well, you're seeing it already, as you noted, right? We're on he has started us on a path to more funding for the formula.
That part's good. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about, can you do that? All the things that you want, the universal pre-K, the higher pay, the reforming Chapter 78, all these things, universal pre-K. Can all that happen without raising taxes?
I think it can, with the governor's vision, really, of getting the economy going. That's the biggest thing. And I think what I always take away from it, when you look around the state, look around the nation and look at us as a state, we were something like 48th, 47th in terms of economic growth. That's a lot of room to grow, a lot of opportunity there. And I think that when you see the chance and the chance to really move that forward, which he's really ran on, let's get the economy right and let's then get education right and all these other pieces, I think if he's able to stimulate and get things going, he'll find those resources.
I guess we can all hope that Amazon employees and executives like good schools.
I'm sure they do. Look, it's a big draw, and I think the governor's actually touched on that. We kind of laugh about it, but when you look at these top companies and where they decide to locate, yes, they want incentives and make sure it's affordable for the bottom line, but they also want places where their employees are going to want to go.
Oh, no, that makes sense. When you look for a house, you look for school districts.
That's right.
I get it.
Dead right.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate you spending time. Sean Spiller is the Vice President of the New Jersey Education Association. When we come back, Governor Brendan Byrne chose a location for his ashes. You're not going to believe where it is. We'll take you there when Jersey Matters continues.